Here we go. We count down. We're going bucket up into space here. And let me see if this actually is now available also as being pushed to my... Yes, it is. Live on YouTube and momentarily we are live as well. We'll give it a moment. It says video stream health is poor until we get everything synced up. There we are. We are live now. All right. So. Oh, I've got to mute myself. Hearing me talk to me is going to drive my head completely insane. Give me a sec here. Mute tab. There we go. Okay. LinkedIn is going to ping me with my own speech, but on a 12-second. So excellent. Hello, everybody. Well, launch, grow. Trevor. So here I am with
David, and I'm the founder of Causality, and together we look at a mix of product-led growth and experimentation. And today we have something super topical.
Yeah, this is... We're having a chat with, about, I should rather say, ChatGPT, how chat is... And how maybe, just maybe, it also isn't. So, I think I've been talking a lot on Twitter about all the things I see that are great about AI and how AI is being used, and all how AI is being used. I think it's worth keeping that in mind. But let me ask you, how would you really think about what a tool as powerful and limited as ChatGPT is?
I think we talk about it in two ways. I think when we talk about AI or ChatGPT as a technology, it's different from how we discuss it as a business model advantage and how it changes how we run businesses. As an example, it's a common use case to use it as a technology and say, all right, ChatGPT, generate an introduction for this project or this article and write a blog post. And that's as a technology. But what you really want to do is to see and envision the future, right? Imagine the future and think about the customer. How does it fit into their workflow? And can you go from asking ChatGPT to write you a blog post to publishing that blog post for you on LinkedIn with scheduling, with all the other things that take up time in your workflow? And I think when we talk about it as a technology and when we talk about it as a business model or a real benefit, you can start to really see how we're actually still in early days, which is very interesting. Until Bing's news yesterday, but we'll get to that, I'm sure.
That's a good point. One of my problem with a lot of the stuff that I see in how people are building and trying to launch like now is they don't play to AI's strengths. They're instead saying, hey, like I see, every day, 2 or 3 write all your copy for you. Let me do a complete re-envisioning of ads for you. And that's, AI is the summation of millions and millions and millions of blog posts, right? The new lawsuit I saw post from Getty Images, OpenAI, $1 trillion, where they basically said, hey, your generative entirety of Getty's image library as a source to learn about photos, because it's all very heavily typed. There's tags. You can learn a lot of these images just for permission first. So you owe us whatever the maximum penalty single image in Getty image, right? Press number. But it's trained on the average of things, right?
That's
so
a price
the
tag.
average of your internet writer is, at best a mediocre writer. So that's not what you want to have as your actual content. I think instead you want use this as a writer to get better. Or if I am myself not a good English writer, how can I produce something and then have ChatGPT bring me up to at least adequate level? because ChatGPT is pretty good about that. And it is also
See people like, oh, this is going to destroy search.
and it is. Microsoft's been talking about how open it,
Mhm.
and then how Google is just now talking about how Bard is going to be part of the search experience with Google. Even not eating, not destroying this existing tool, they're saying it comes. And that is, I think, the difference between the actual practitioners something versus the armchair quarterbacks. It's gonna, there won't be any Google anymore because it's gonna replace search. Like, no, it's not, man. No, it's not.
Well, I think in the early days, before we really saw the applications, people were very confused, right? Because if you look at a workflow, when I'm writing something, I have to do some research, right? So research happens before I begin to write. Or maybe I write a skeleton and then I do a research on each one of those points. But what ChatGPT seems to do, and sometimes perfectly and sometimes, with errors, is that it is combining. So if you wanted to compare, for example, the features between, I don't know, an iPhone 11 and an iPhone 14, right? You would do a search for features of iPhone 11, you would do a search for features on iPhone 14, and then you would manually be comparing that. But first you'd have to locate and make sure that the source was the right source and there was the up-to-date source, and it was maybe there are variations based on other specs, is it the correct model that you're comparing, etc., etc. And then you would manually look at those two things together, and then you would start to write, right? These are my insights. I think it's a good idea or not a good idea to upgrade to the newest iPhone based on what you're using it for. But what AI is doing is that it's locating the data, it's putting the data together, it's giving you some insight with mistakes and no mistakes. I think the latest issue is that even in the advertising that was put out, it named the Hubble telescope as the first telescope to to see a planet outside our solar system, but it was a different telescope, and that caused a bit of a shockwave as people
Wasn't
rather
even
confrontingly
factually
in advertising campaigns see a mistake.
Great example of
Yeah. That wasn't even
Factually incorrect.
It was a great a poorly bounded question.
said what telescope was the first to photograph an exoplanet.
And
A given exoplanet,
the first. It was just not the first ever. And so it's like that tiny slice of meat
means technically for a programmer that was right.
for
an AI
that was right. For
human,
you obviously meant the first step, not just the given planet. But that's
also
also
an example of
this tool is more narrow than you think. The question that a human would interpret and a computer may very.
And to be fair, because it is called ChatGPT at the moment, and there is a chat interface, right? So the nuance has to be described in the prompt that you write. Not everybody's going to write a perfect prompt, right? But again, is this a research tool or is it a content, finished product generator? Is it a brainstorming planning tool, or is it just a part of getting something done, which is regular posting on LinkedIn with AI written and researched posts, and then scheduling, and then uploading them for you so you can be totally hands off on your content. So I think it's still early days. I mean, I think very interestingly, this is still very early days, and I think it's interesting that you say it's a narrow tool, because I think its breadth what allows for this minor dissatisfaction and these complaints about it, as opposed to it being narrow and that causing the issue, because it's just such an open tool with a chat interface. If you get the prompt wrong, the output is wrong.
That's interesting. I think the interface is broad, right? We look at
to almost another human.
and then you don't realize how dumb the entity on the and I remember people would.
So they're like, hey, can
Can
you
you write me
instruction
guide
guide
for how to assemble?
in the manner of Shakespeare? This is practically sentient.
And I'm like, it really is like if you were to ask a high school sophomore who's a good writer. It's very surface play with the
Not
really think about what I'm saying. And so that is right.
One
One interesting thing here, right? The raw solution is what really does it solve? It's an immense toy, right? The option was the fastest of any software in the history of humanity.
toy.
And I think adoption is, again, one of those things that conflates so many things together, right? So people have signed up and registered to try it, but who are they? Are they really the mass market? You know, the mass market is really going to be exposed to it when it's, integrated with a search engine, or when it's integrated into some kind of office or productivity suite. That's when the mass market will really be exposed to it. But right now with adoption, you're seeing people who are probably the tip of the spear, early adopters. People are willing to experiment, learn how to write prompts, see how the prompts need to be improved, and understand the limitations. But if you go on YouTube, you're going to see people who are giving just a topic and then getting AI to write an entire structure for a website, then going into another AI and generating the web structure for it, and then generating all the images for it, and sort of end to end, really speeding up their workflow. And if you don't have a very specific outcome in mind, sure, right? So it's the product of many insights, and it may be different from what you would have done if you were doing it on your own. But if you use it as part of a workflow, that is quite interesting short-term usefulness. But I have played with it, and I have found that I have had to correct many things. But the topic of the things that I write about, I'm really trying to push the boundaries of a particular piece of content or a particular domain of knowledge. But if you're simply trying to do a comparative analysis of two vintage cars or two older iPhones to see which is the best bang for your buck, that there's not really insight from creating new knowledge, it's insight from comparing existing robust knowledge sets, then it's very useful, certainly.
Enough.
I've seen it described as mansplaining as a service.
I have occasionally somewhat slightingly
Ouch.
called it mediocrity as a service, because it is some of everyone, which of course by definition comes to the mean, to the mediocre.
I think if you are
Bereft of ideas, bereft of a way to approach a thing, it brings you the competency of the and that can be tremendously powerful because it lets you skip the first 3 years of learning a thing. You mentioned, right, you were trying to write some PHP, and
That's right, it was a Python script, and I was like,
yeah,
because I've seen people write entire website backends, on ChatGPT, and they give it a data set and it outputs, right? So Super Bowl champions, most yards run, most number of goals scored, etc. You put in a database and you write a fairly straightforward script. But I, haven't touched coding since, don't laugh, 1998. And except
Yeah,
for
me
writing
too.
SQL scripts, this was a great jumpstart into, exploring how usable a piece of code would be to scrape something. And it was a jumpstart.
The GitHub Copilot launched a while back, which was kind of a similar idea. And
I think
right,
people are exploring
again,
how
how
do
you
you
use
AI as
your partner, the person
who-
or the entity, not a person, that you can bounce ideas off of.
my primary use. I actually make
it for all. I
make quite a fair
use of
AI
AI
copywriting
at CrowdSingers, but
never
never do you see what the AI made. I
inevitably will
read what the AI wrote and go, that's
garbage.
be something to react to.
When I write something
Like this,
how do I make this
better? That likewise for
a developer,
right?
a very good
coder
I do an endian sort for an array of this size. What do I do?
Let me ask the AI tool, and it'll well, that's rubbish. Optimize it to make it more efficient. But a key piece to start. I think that is what makes it really. It sits at your elbow and is always there to get you 80% of the way to some. And
That's great.
it's interesting,
Let's
right?
talk about the word disruptive as well.
Sure.
Yeah, because
The
solving that cold start problem of first words on a page, for a lot of writers, that is very useful. If it's again, if it's no knowledge, like what are 3 bullet points, or what are the 3 most common failures in this car engine, and it cranks that up for you, and you're going to write an article about which vintage car you should buy. I've got cars on the brain today, I can tell. But I think that when you say it's disruptive, can it get the whole job to be done? Right? Eventually, yes. Right? I think all of the chat AIs will start to give you a source, right? Because that's one of the things now. How are you going to check the output is factually accurate? If you're a subject matter expert and you're just getting this to generate stuff that you already know, it's very easy for you to fact check, right? Your copywriting, obviously, you understand the subject matter intimately, so you can always improve and tweak it. Eventually, they're all going to come with source checking and fact checking, but right now, not just engineers testing the the AI who can thwart it and make it generate a false statistic. It can attribute a quote to somebody, or a data point to somebody that they actually never. It's a false attribution, a false quote, or something like that. If you are doing extensive research and that's the first time you see it, are you able to check everything? So that's where there are dangers, right? So let's leave the word disruptive aside. If you are using it to cheat and create a final product, you're going to have some issues. If you're using it to become part of your work process and existing workflow, and you are putting in your own guardrails for the quality of that output, it can be useful. But I think we're already, we've already pushed the boundaries of expectations. Like, well, if this can write it for me, might as well write it perfect, and then we just don't really have to do anything anymore ever, and we're all going to be out of a job. That's just not how the way. That's, Trevor, you said before, it's not overall artificial intelligence, right? It's just one aspect of intelligence. It's just generative AI, but it's not general, right? It's not a general intelligence. It's not sentient.
Yeah, and that is a lot of people talk today,
or in WhatsApp, or in Messenger, or in Telegram, or whatever.
it's
That little box where you text into,
and
the human is responding.
right?
The interface is broad,
But the
solution is narrow.
but we feel like it should be in person on the other end here. Right? We're a long way from Elijah way back in the day. Chatbot I remember using back when those were things, showing how old I am. Elijah Chat was one of the first
Yeah.
somewhat to it back in practically sentient. It was a long way from there. ChatGPT takes it to another level, but it is still, the interface feels much broader than the tool. I think what's interesting is this is disruptive, and two things to compare it to. One is to the whole crypto space.
I have a couple of clients.
But so much of crypto was just, here's a cool thing. Please somehow you can make from it. And a lot of what was being built there was just hot garbage. AI, where stuff is being built right now that has utility, that monetizable, that people are, I mean, oh,
GPT
had
had
100 million monthly users in January, right? Everyone trying to figure out what I make it.
Let's see the retention of
Yeah.
that, though.
schools.
Yeah,
Schools all across
the
the U.S.
across the. What
But
happened
when students write with
with
ChatGPT,
GPT? Every IP lawyer in the world is both panicking madly and also salivating wildly. It's like when I think it was the in-house count. IBM saw the first Xerox machine. He went, well, copyright law. There goes patent law.
Idea can just be copied instantly.
You can't own a text.
It's gone.
It's
It's like Gutenberg all over again.
beyond
Even that.
and it is won't know for probably, but right, what we launch,
Think of business idea. How do you get it ready to launch?
how do you go at biggest, most successful build, and the
Yeah, but still in product market fit, right? At the moment.
But they've got something out of the market.
yeah,
Tremendous user base. No real monetization yet.
and it's really
I think
interesting
the-
to think.
I
if
think
you-
the M&A can be considered some monetization, but not end user monetization. Certainly,
guess.
it is an underlying technology that's been acquired to some extent.
Sam Altman did say,
when asked a year ago how are you going to monetize OpenAI, he said, "Well, we assume at some point we will make an artificial general intelligence, an AGI. We will ask it what to do, and then we will do that," which is just ballsy at a level that. But right now,
and revenue system
system really put in place, they had to put something in just to cover the cost of, like, once they roll out API access, not even to cover the cost, just to limit the. Right, that's part of why, and we'll talk about it a little later, I think, about how the partnership with Microsoft was a lifesaver for them. Just tremendous get this from the right, put something out to the response back from the market. This is a fun. Haven't built a business yet, so it is be durable, and that I think is something we will see over the next couple of years.
It is an evolution in technology, right? Because before Siri and before Alexa, we were already using, sort of unstructured inputs to get information back, right? But the entire field of AI and ML, of artificial intelligence and machine learning, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, that the boundary of what really was now AI as technology evolved is actually very basic computing now for us, right? So Siri would have been unimaginable magic in the 70s or 80s in Stanford or wherever the first AI labs were. But right now we've pushed the boundaries, and again expectations are changing. And when you use the word disruptive, to really get an end-to-end job done, I mean, imagine ChatGPT inside a Tesla, right? From a corporate strategy perspective, how can you improve the experience of owning a Tesla? Do you start to write emails seamlessly? Do we take for granted that while the car is driving you for you with your hands off the wheel, that now you'll be semi-dictating and writing emails? I mean, that would be a great integration. That would be a very disruptive thing. I don't think we should say disruptive just for something that's new and improved. I think we should say disruptive when it starts to put so many parts of your workflow, of a puzzle, of so many steps in doing something into one platform. That's really disruptive. And that's, I think, the business models. I would be very surprised if, over the past 2 years, they hadn't already been looking at where this creates meaningful, preference modes for products. Right, people have been monetizing all sorts of AI. Jasper, the copywriting tool, just closed a big funding round. Lots of people have different versions of AI in research, and they have subscription and growth. And there's so many competitors. I think the novelty will come in really getting a job done end to end. But again, we have to manage our expectations for some time, because although it's very impressive right now, if you really want to do something new, you're going to need to still put in some effort. Like, how lazy will we get? I am not going to comment. If we get to the point where it says, hey, write an interesting blog post on the stuff I usually write about, and it does all that for me and then publishes it for me, and then I spent a grand total of 7 seconds maintaining my LinkedIn presence, that would be a very different world from what we have now.
You know
with
my opinion
ChatGPT.
about that.
I think we can never lose the autonomy and the direction and the vision. Let's leave aside the completeness of, having read the entire internet and, the insights that can come from that. But we're not quite there yet.
I think
Do you
having
want
read the
to,
entire internet, the
yeah,
terrifying.
I think so too. But if you look at it, if they are just in product market fit right now, from the customer perspective, if you bring in, good search and location of data, and even summary of insights into my Microsoft Word experience, that is very disruptive. I no longer have to use a standalone search engine and copy and paste things in and format them and, match the tone of voice. That will be very disruptive, right?
Have you seen the Bing plus OpenAI that they put out yesterday? Or
It's really fresh off the press, isn't it?
it is.
Hot off the
So
presses.
they showed things like,
Page.
give me the summary, right? Give me the 3 bullet points about age, and you query in. You can say, that's
I've never heard
of
it.
in uh in
Okay, without needing
to go to actual search.
like, hey,
Our subs, and then check. Oh, if you
You know-
don't have, I don't know, cream of baking soda with some cornstarch.
cool.
I didn't have to go away to find it. It all sits. I think now we're transitioning into, and it's a good next point to talk about, is unnormal. Like
Sure.
hundreds
In some ways, chat
GPT, what AI, generative and conversational chat AI, a fundamental tech like SSL or TCP/IP, it'll just become some
all of our
devices because people assume it needs to be. So that said, right now there's a horse race, and it's always fun to speculate.
Right.
Microsoft plus OpenAI and Google plus Bard, and I am astounded at the speed at which Microsoft has been moving, and I'm also astounded that I said a sentence that was, I'm astounded at how fast Microsoft has been moving, because that is not a company you associate with speed. The beating Google to the. I think it's worth investigating. Like, why? For
OpenAI
with Microsoft is really important right now.
I am not surprised that Microsoft is involved here. I think for the past couple of years, you've seen them really divest certain initiatives and really focusing on AI in various aspects of their business model and technology. You can see the hirings and promotions of people running the AI parts of the business, and Satya Nadella's increased focus on how to use, how to really wield data. Because, if the data's not wielded correctly, right, you lose a whole bunch of that benefit. So it is very disruptive to have a very large AI component in a cloud business, because that's where so much data is stored. So what we're looking at is, I don't think also crazy speed. I think this is all premeditated. I think that there has been a lot of thought going on, behind the scenes, really trying to. I think it was the Morning Brew newsletter that just had some amazing copywriting. They said Bing is trying to move Google to page 2. They said Bing is no longer a punchline in the browser wars. But what really becomes the business model, again, right? There are workflows, so in jobs to be done. In that theory, there's a point where you're defining what you want to do, and then you're looking for the things that you need to get that job done, and then you sort of have to work with the things that you've collected, and you've got to put them in the right format or sequence. You have to do stuff with that data to be able to get the value, and then you're starting to do the job, right? Do I have everything I've needed? And then you proceed, and eventually you get to some kind of tweaking and modifying before you're really done, right? If you have AI as a search box alongside your Microsoft Word document, That's very useful. If you're in some kind of Excel or Google Sheets, and instead of having to go look at the latest share prices, right? If you can say, collect me the current market cap of not the top 10 of the S&P, but just, all the ones that are network effect businesses, and it leaves Exxon out and gives you all the market caps of those, you can start to do a lot of enhanced productivity for your users. That is very disruptive, because then they are locked into a single platform which has research, and it has the creation that you're doing, and it has the maybe the fact checking, and then you're really locked in, and that creates a huge moat for the Microsoft 365, the Office ecosystem. You're creating so much value there. And then if Elon has his way, right, the best experience in a car will be, well, if I don't really have to drive the car anymore, right, what should I be doing in the car? How do I start to use the time in my self-driving car meaningfully, etc., etc.? So I think there is quite a lot of business model innovation that can go in once you can remove all that tedium. I mean, there was a time when, databases didn't have a sort and filter function, right? That was an innovation, and we take that for granted now. This takes it to the next level. It sorts, it filters, it prioritizes, and it extracts exactly in some kind of data table that you want. That's very progressive. That's a big innovation.
So
I do think
there's a couple.
it's worth remembering.
Chat.
I think very end of December.
Right. And
GPT-3 was pretty cool, but it had nothing like
like, and I'm
sure there was a partnership in the works
works before
before ChatGPT launched.
I
I think it suddenly became number one.
one on Byte, and they were
Everything else we were
doing drop and make this happen
Still, like,
again. And
size.
to
Have some
executive firepower that's pushing
pushing this hard.
like
You corporate guy, right?
I'm a scrappy little startup guy who hates meeting with more than 3 people. So you know how hard it is to get 200 people to all go in the same direction for an hour, much less the weeks of effort it took to close this and get code into Bing and all the cool ways this can be used. Like this was, even if it's 3 or 4 months before we ever heard about ChatGPT, that Bing was working on it. That's still crazy fast. That's still, for a Microsoft-sized company, ludicrously fast. So I think the monetization possibility just directly at Microsoft, right? That's tremendous. Another thing I think is OpenAI has been very hesitant to release the API for ChatGPT because they know they're going to get just murdered when they do. 4 companies in the world, maybe 6 in the world, that you can go to and say, I need infinite bandwidth and server time to be
Sure.
able to handle several billion API calls a day. And
Sure.
you've got, arguably, probably like WeChat in China has that kind of server power. You've got Amazon, you've got Google, you've got IBM/Microsoft. Like the people you can partner with to make API access survivable are very few.
Sure.
And if you'd asked me 6 months ago, is Microsoft your best bet for Open API to pair up with? I'd have been like, I don't think so. Because I would say Google, right? Because Google just still seemed the more innovative company to me.
If
But
they
one,
didn't
Google
already
building
have
Bard,
something
of course.
cooking.
Yeah,
Right?
of course,
If they
Google
didn't already
building
have
Bard.
But you're raising the business, or the corporate strategy, the business strategy perspective, right? If you're looking at Microsoft 365 and you have to pay for that, right? Anything more than $100 or $200 a year, and you can get a fairly comprehensive Google Workspace, right, for let's say $15 a month. Now the prices have dropped. Microsoft, that entire Office suite used to be very, very expensive, right?
Oh, yeah.
They've really disrupted how they sell with the Cloud 365, and right, you never have an outdated version of your productivity suite, which is very disruptive. But you look at it from the user's perspective, the business model perspective, sorry, the customer journey perspective. You're looking at ways to grow and protect your Microsoft productivity suite, right? You've finally got Teams up to a certain level. You've got your collaboration suite.
Crazy level.
But
Like 40 million
ima-
users, something wild.
imagine UX researchers saying, look, we're studying our customers and they are opening Google in Chrome and then copying and pasting data into Microsoft Word, right? They're not using Bing, right? There's no integration between Bing and Word in a way that is very, very innovative yet, right? Still copying and pasting.
Still,
And you
20
start to
years
look at
later.
it from a customer journey perspective. I really do not think that there is any way they could have helped Bing better, helped Edge better, right? Helped the Microsoft Productivity Suite better than to put all of that into a single platform. I foresee a time when you're not even going to have a sidebar in your productivity suite, right? Or maybe you won't have a productivity suite, it will just be Edge. And Edge will be the productivity suite, and there won't be a sidebar for you to type and talk to ChatGPT. You'll be just typing it directly into the browser, and the browser will look like some version of ChatGPT, and you'll be doing everything from a single window, right? And then they'll start to sell the Surface with just that own super light OS because you don't need apps anymore because you're doing everything inside that. Generate an Excel spreadsheet for me inside the same window. Sure, job done, no problem. Upload it to the cloud so I can share it. After you've generated the table and extracted the data and filtered it and highlighted the three parts of our business that are more than 10% of our costs, highlight them in red and then send them to Trevor. Those are all very simple automations that once you have them in a single window, you're freeing up a huge amount of time. And people say, oh, I'm worried about our jobs and so on and so forth. But that is innovation, right? I mean, there was a point in time when you needed two people to start a car, not one, right? And now, whoever was, cranking cars in the old days as a job, he's out of a job now, isn't he? But
Has been
it
for
is
a
very
while.
unfortunate. But the productivity that we need to drive the economy at this stage of very, very hot markets, right, and depressions and recessions, I don't think we're going to be putting blue collar people out of a job. So
No.
that is heartening, right? But I think people who are white collar, yes, their jobs will change. There will need to be retraining and so on and so forth. But I think that is the future. I think that Microsoft must have been cooking this up for ages. If you look at even basic Google Cloud Docs, there's so many insights, right? Even in their spreadsheets, there's so much AI already in there saying, hey, would you like to do this pivot chart, that pivot chart? That's already, in the old days, that would have been incredibly advanced AI and machine learning. Now it's almost free in the Google suite, right? So what is the next level of disruption?
Cool. So I think to bring this back to who we want to talk to, you and I, David, right? Most of the people who we talk to, either as you are running Causality, or I'm running Crowd Tamers, or folks who are listening to this podcast, most of them will probably not have 100 million users a month after they launch. Most, I imagine. Um, but what do we learn from, in the idea of build and launch and grow, right? On the build side, I think that's you can't learn much about that because it's such a big data set. Generative AI cost it was like $45 million to make GPT-3 because of all the processor time. Whatever, fine. But launch and grow. Let's talk about those, right? When you have a product, you've got demand, not this level. You've got demand for something. You built it. Right? What do we want to extract out of how OpenAI launched as advice to another startup? What do you say? Crib from them. This is good for you to think about for your launch.
Totally. Best question, right? Stop thinking about these things from a technology perspective. Look in the customer journeys, right? You've seen many companies drop in the generative writing or the image generation AI, right, as standalone products. Think deeper, think further ahead, study your customer journeys. If you are doing blog post writing AI or long form writing AI, and you are not automating all the steps for them to make money with that content, right? You are forgetting that they need to upload it to LinkedIn or to Medium, and they want to monetize it from there, and they want to, automate payments in there. You have to create end-to-end workflows if you really want to serve your customer, because people are not buying your technology, they are buying the benefit of your technology. So again, whenever we look at companies that are trying to increase engagement or retention or monetization, right, look at it from the value chain, look at it from the customer journey, and see what you're missing. Really understand how the customer is setting up, doing his stuff in the middle of his process, and ending it. What's he really trying to do? Obviously, there's some kind of if he's paying you, right, he's getting some value out of it. Solve that whole job. Like, we were seeing things like Jasper for the longest time, and then suddenly Juice comes up and says, hey, we'll not even just write the content for you. We'll help you find keywords for the right content to write. Then we'll write the content for you. Then we'll schedule it for you, and then we'll publish it for you. That's a whole workflow, and that makes it a suddenly very appealing solution. That's a very easy sell, and that's logically a much better path to product market fit. So think from your customer's point of view. Forget the technology that underpins it. The right technology can be built or found. Netflix had to build their own technology, right, to solve the pains of just finding something to watch in a convenient way at 8 p.m. at night when you're exhausted after work, right? That they really solved that with streaming.
Okay, I do think, yeah, for the launch side of this, right? After you built it, you launch it, you've got your users. You won't have the convenience of this many users, but definitely you're going to find your user base is segmenting out. So 100 million users in January. I am reminded of at the start of December, people were using Midjourney to make like science fictional profile photos. And I forget Lenza. Lenza was like at $1 million a day in sales for about 12 days. And by mid-January, it had dropped 90%.
Because the
And
technology
so,
starts to be given away for free,
oh yes,
right?
the idea of using Midjourney to make these profile photos. Now I see people in. I'm part of the Midjourney Discord, and so people can just generate stuff. You ping Discord and you ask for it, and they will upload their photo and say, "Make me, me as an
Mm-hmm.
alien, whatever," and off they go, free. And
Ah, it can do
but
any. It can generate any image,
you can
Midjourney,
generate
not
anything.
just a photo of me,
It's
right? Yeah,
astounding.
do a product image, do a
I
website
have
mock-up.
almost
Yeah.
almost every ad campaign I'm running these days. I'm using at least one AI generated image in. And but you've got your user base fragments out here. Oh, my camera's lost itself. There you go. Fragments out. You've got your people who are just kicking the tires. You've got your people who become true fans. And as you are launching, listen to the people who want to make you a core part of what they do. In OpenAI's case right now, OpenAI isn't actually a solution provider, they're a technology provider. And they don't really want to hear from the David Isaacs of the world who go, I want some code to help me scrape a Facebook profile or whatever. That's not their user, really. Their user are the X-ray.techs, right? Who is building an AI meeting and transcription service that they will monetize, and then OpenAI will bill them for API usage, right? That's who their user is, and they need to talk to those people, which is going to be 1%, a half a percent, a hundredth of a percent of those 100 million people. And so when you launch, look at your users and make sure, like one super common thing you'll hear, someone's on the free trial. If you just add this feature, I will pay you. That is a lie, and do not believe them, right? You'll be like, oh, all I have to do is devote 20 hours of work, and this guy will sign up for my $9 a month tier. One, he won't, and two, that makes you one of the worst paid developers I've ever heard of. So think about not just who you can speak to, think of who you should speak to as you launch, because of that feedback, right? The Microsofts of the world who go to OpenAI and say, look, we'll give you a literal boat full of money, an actual literal boat full of money to integrate you into Bing. That's their customer, right? So who's your customer? Think about them. The build, launch, grow, the last part of the BOG podcast. What is, so their growth, you've been talking, like you've been pie in the sky. Here's is it going to be now where I just go to, I'm sitting in my car and I say, Elon, take me to work. Elon, take me home. Whatever it is. And then Elon, write my work emails because I'm bored this morning. Okay, thank you. Elon goes off and does it. Very pie in the sky. But right now, so build, launch, you listen to who your real users are. OpenAI's case, it's the actual paying folks who want that API, who are waiting for the API. What's your growth strategy once you've got those, you've got that launch, you've got some people? What do you do next to grow? It's hard to say based off OpenAI because they're not in growth phase yet. They're still in launch.
I agree. Well, and for Microsoft and OpenAI, why that API isn't released yet, there's a lot of I can't tell you how much corporate strategy is in that and how much technology challenge is in that. But the competitive advantage of Microsoft being able to roll that out first, build that into all their product suite, and then distribute it, right, is going to prevent quite a lot of competition, right? It's going to be a huge technology advantage that is going to play very well to their distribution advantage, right? So they'll be able to roll it out at scale, monetize it at scale, again, compete with other productivity suites. But in terms of growing again, I think, I think a lot of people said that, for example, Netflix was technology advantage, but it really wasn't. It was really customer experience design and then making sure that they built the right technology to deliver that customer experience. I think, Trevor, your point about having enough market size, right? If you're building a set of features and you're looking at your product roadmap and you're looking at your backlog, right? What you really want to be doing is delivering the fastest path to monetization for your business, very often if you're product market fit. So it has to be a meaningful market size. And it shouldn't take you away from likely growth paths, right? So you don't build something that will make you $100 today, but will take you away from the $100,000 business. Right? It has to be relatively aligned. You should see some kind of, if not perfectly arrow straight, progress towards your real product market fit traction scale stage, at least, not in the wrong direction, right? Just adjacent would be nice.
It's never a straight arrow shot, but I get it. All right. That's our takeaways, I think. Any last thoughts, right? We're coming up at 50 minutes. We're about to wrap up. Any last thoughts you think we need to lay out to people, enlighten them?
I think for a lot of people, they're going to be confronted and think that they need a technology advantage to really beat customers. I'd say focus on your customer journey and your customer's workflow. See if you can provide the best experience. The incrementality of technology is very commoditizable, right? So yeah, if you can build a car that only has a range of 400 kilometers instead of 450 kilometers, but you can summarize the key takeaways from a video call while he's driving, and so he can then respond to only the key takeaways, I'd say, I'd invest in that, right? Rather than add another 50 kilometers of range. So it's about where you're competitive, which part of their workflow that you are not competitive, and can you really nail that end to end in a very customer pleasing, very retentive way.
Yeah, and I think to your point, and I think to the point we discuss launching strategy, some people would very much rather have the car with range, but automatically do my video calls and summarize them for me, and some wouldn't. And knowing which is your client and knowing how to find which of those clients. Well, there's
Yes.
two things, I guess. One is you can, of course, learn how to do it. Two is you can talk to us because that's what we're experts in. Over at Crowd Tamers, I take little startups. I grow them from 0 to 2 million plus in annual revenue. I've done it 15 times. I take clients on from all over the world. Right now, I have, I think, 7 countries on my client list, and help them figure out in those first 60 days who's actually buying from you, what their actual problem is, and how you solve it. And right now, I am launching the same startup 4 times in February, where I'm AI recording calls, transcribing them, and summarizing them, just like Elon Musk should be doing for all of us. And I'm launching it into 4 different verticals. Follow me along on LinkedIn or my newsletter, sign up at crowdtamers.com, and you can see if this is a brilliant idea or a terrible one. That's me, David. Tell people about you.
So I'm a product guy, and I help the C-suite bridge the challenges of product strategy and marketing strategy and make sure that they're aligned to customer experience, and making sure that we're not just building products, but we're building products that have strong engagement, right? Products that delight the customers, and making sure that we really understand our customers, because that is the essence of fundraising. That is the essence of scaling. It's all the same thing. How do you really outcompete? How do you really nail the job to be done of your customers? That's what we do, and we do it with experimentation. And together, Trevor and I really help you be data driven about your strategy in driving revenue and monetization. And I think my favorite takeaway from today is when you look at your customers, who's using your chat GPT 10 times a day and who's using your chat GPT once a day, right? If you can track to that level of data and insight, I recommend always having a full revenue ops and marketing automation funnel, really understanding product usage to really drive growth of your business, because there are different types of customers. There are heavily engaged and not heavily engaged customers. Let's bring data to really help you chart your product roadmap.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. This has been Build, Launch, Grow. This will be up on Spotify and on our website sometime. This was our first try recording a live podcast and broadcasting it, streaming to LinkedIn and to YouTube. Hopefully, somebody finds this useful. Thank you very much for your time this morning where you are and this evening where I am. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye.